Welcome to Online Internet Anatomy 2. I'm Mr. Toller. The best way to get in touch with me, of course, and our link throughout the entire semester is through Blackboard. If you are on campus and you need to stop by, it can be found in Office 108B, the office suite on the first floor of the Science Building. The telephone number here, 556-2376, is a direct line to my office. The student hours and my overall class schedule is posted in Blackboard and on my office door for your benefit throughout the semester. The weekly schedule, this is from back in spring of 2017, but you can see the classes are listed when student hours that I should be in the office and available for you are listed, and then of course I have lab and prep time office hours that are closed, where I'm most likely in the microbiology class. As far as survival skills for Wallace, caffeine and carbs go a long way, and especially I would imagine doing this internet and going through the lecture videos and the course materials in Blackboard, caffeine and carbs can really benefit you. It's been proven that if you're hungry and the neurons aren't feeding and have nutrients that are readily available to them, you're not actually learning. So therefore you have to eat to learn. There are some mandatory tasks that are in your introductory letter. The first thing is to please bookmark the courses.wallace.edu as your way to access this course online. Also view this introduction course video. Of course you're doing that now, that was found on the Getting Started page. And from that you have the syllabus signature page that is found in Blackboard as a PDF and a Word document. So if you have access to Adobe and PDFs to sign, date that. If you need to print it out in Word and sign and date it, create a PDF file and then send it back to me in Blackboard. There's also a How to Succeed presentation. So this comes from your textbook, and it's followed by a How to Succeed quiz that's also found in Blackboard. I've asked that you earn a 50% or higher on this assignment. Once you do that, then the quiz that is the Anatomy 1 review quiz from number 5 will open for you. So this is the required academic work, this Anatomy 1 review quiz. There are 20 questions. You can take it as many times as you need to get at least a 50%, hopefully higher than that. If you do not listen to the entire video, complete the assignments that were listed by the deadline, which is usually a 24-hour deadline, the course calendar usually will remind you, but this suffices so that since it's internet that you are not participating in the class. So failure to properly submit those items will result in no access to the Anatomy 1 quiz and no access to Units 2 through 6. So the materials will open up for you after you've received a confirmation email that I've looked over the materials that you've submitted and you have grades entered for those quizzes from item number 3 and 4. As far as chain of command, as a Wallace instructor, it's up to me to see about and govern what goes on and the parameters of my class. But if I cannot suffice you, you do have the right to meet with Mrs. Julie Fisher, which is our division director. At present there's no associate dean, but Ms. Leslie Reeder over in Instructional Affairs would be happy to meet with you with an appointment if we cannot appease you in the science department. As far as the textbook and lab manual, we're using the same textbook as you would have used here at Wallace for Anatomy 1, which is the first edition of Ammerman at present, and you also have an Anatomy 2 lab manual that's found in the bookstore. Make sure though that it picks up with the endocrine system, and it does say Anatomy 2 or Bio 202, Anatomy and Physiology 2 on the manual. Just like all of the courses here at Wallace, you have student learner outcomes that will be assessed on your unit test and your final lab practical. So these are reporting devices and statistics that I send to administration to prove to the SACS administration, the Southern Association of Colleges and Schools, that we are teaching you the same material that you would get at another institution. As far as course content, and since this is internet, the lecture part of this is on your back to actually go through the lectures. The chapter objectives with the key terms embedded in those are vital to your success in the class. My lecture notes should go along with the PowerPoints verbatim, so you should be able to follow with the lecture notes or the actual videos that are in Blackboard, which these videos are YouTube accessible. And since this is also internet for the first time, the laboratory sections will be lab videos that are also posted in Blackboard for you. They go along with the lab manual that you're using and definitely models of the organ systems that we go through in Anatomy 2. Of course, there's other websites that can help you with the laboratory portion of this. There's interactive websites so that you can gauge if you're actually getting the laboratory material. Plus you have laboratory objectives for each lab. So make sure that you're getting both lab and lecture. And remember, anatomy and physiology, the form, the anatomy part of that does directly correlate with the physiology, which is the function of that organ and organ system. There's also possibly, as needed, days that we can have open lab, that if you need to come and look at models or you have specific questions that you need to sit down with me, feel free to do that. Other methods of instruction, again, these lecture videos, outlines that go along with the videos. Some of it is fill in the blank, some you just need to highlight the objectives as they're answered in the video. The laboratory models and the videos for those should again directly relate to any model of that organ. So it's not about memorizing what's it pointing to exactly in the lab book, but to find that structure, know what you're looking at, and I will try to describe that in the laboratory videos. You also have 5 discussion board entries. 2 of those are in Unit 1, an introduction of yourself, and then also an item off of the objectives for Chapter 16 on the endocrine system. You have chapter quizzes in Blackboard and lab quizzes for you. They will always be open for you when you start the unit. They'll close the night before the exam at midnight. So those are to benefit you. For lecture, it's mainly vocabulary terms. Vocabulary terms are very important for anatomy and physiology, as well as practicing labeling the lab models and the histology that's found in every single lab throughout Anatomy 2. There are 6 unit exams. Those are in multiple choice format if you take them at the time of the test. There are 6 lab exams that you'll take on the same day that are fill in the blank. But again, going back to your chapter quizzes can help you with the lecture. Your lab quizzes can help you with the lab exams. When it becomes final exam time, you do have a comprehensive final laboratory exam and a split between Unit 6 material and your final lecture material, which covers Units 1 through 5. As far as your chapter objectives, these are your study guide. We have students all of the time asking us, well, can't we have a study guide? Where's our study guide? The chapter objectives are your study guide, and I've gone a step further by giving you quick checks based off of the objectives. So every section has these quick checks that go back and they try to reinforce as questions the actual objectives for that chapter and that particular section. As far as grading criteria, I've always, since I started teaching, have high expectations for everyone. There's something that you've went through to get to Anatomy 2 class. So the grade is laid out for you very explicitly. We said you have 6 lecture exams, so each one of those count 10% apiece. So 60% of your final grade comes from your lecture material. 25% altogether comes from the laboratory portion of the class. So you have 5 lab quizzes that will count as 15% of your grade, all averaged together. That's units 1 through 5. And you have the final lab quiz, which counts 10% by itself. So a total of 25% from lab. And then all of your daily and Blackboard assessments, your chapter quizzes, those lab quizzes, those all are averaged together and they count 15% of your grade. So 60 and 25, you have 85% of your grade, and then another 15% to make 100% of your grade that will be given after final exams. As far as your chapter and your lab quizzes, again, counting 15%, they are matching for lecture and fill in the blank terms for lab. They're due every unit the night before the exam at midnight. So the day before the exam, post it on your calendar to help you keep up with that. They're open for 90 minutes at the time, so you have plenty of time. A lot of times there's 20, maybe 30 terms that you go through. They will auto-submit after 90 minutes. I will take the top grade, the highest grade. So if you take it 1 time, if you take it 5 times, Blackboard gives me the highest score on that, and that's what I post in my Excel spreadsheet. So these are designed again to help you. They're not extra work just to say that you're doing something extra, but they will help you review the vocabulary, they'll help you review the material and the concepts that the objectives are asking you to learn in the class. So that's why they count 15% of your overall grade. So unlimited attempts, Blackboard gives the highest grade, and altogether my ABCs of success. So usually in class, A is for attendance, because attendance, being attentive, showing up for class, doing what I ask you to do, that's a huge part of success. Here you need to be attentive and carefully listen through the lab and the lecture videos. You'll notice inflections in my voice, and also pointing out directly that this particular objective is answered in this section of the notes, or this particular vocabulary term, to be able to explain it. Those are key things that you can tune into as you listen to the videos. Also, all of those Blackboard assessments, they're not busy work. They're designed by me to help you with the material, to help you with the lab models. The second thing is being prepared. How can you be prepared? Again, go back to those chapter objectives. Every test question relates directly back to those chapter objectives. Your reading assignments, you have the textbook, use it. Even if you don't like to read, or you have not up to par reading comprehension, you can still scan over the unit. The title of the sections, those headings, will help you gear into what is being talked about in that particular paragraph. So if it's there where an objective is found, pay attention to that. Go back and read over that. See if what you read matches with what I've tried to teach in the videos. And then finally, concentrate on learning. Concentration is the first key to studying. We know that from Anatomy 1, the way that we develop long-term memory is creating this pathway of neurons so that your brain knows where to go and pick up that file of material. How can you do that? Well, first off, you have to force yourself to study. And study is not just reading over your notes. It's not just reading the textbook, but you're actually pulling out the vital material that's needed to answer that objective in your own words. Don't try to memorize the textbook or the lecture notes. Use note cards. Note cards shouldn't be paragraphs. They should be bullets of information, of just the important stuff. If you do read through the chapter, highlight those key terms, or highlight where the objectives are answered, so that if you're struggling when you begin to start studying, you can go back and easily find where that objective was answered. I'm a proponent of graphic organizers, and we'll talk more about this later on, but I'm auditory and visual, so graphic organizers help me get the information that I need in a visual form so that it makes learning a little bit more easier. The chapter quizzes will help you. Also, time management. Time is everyone's enemy. So having time management, using your time wisely. This first exam with just the first chapter on the endocrine system is a large chapter. You are just beginning the course and we test the very next week. So it's important, it's vitally important to time manage. Keep up a calendar. Keep up with how much time that you're doing each part of the pre-assessments before you actually get to the exam. Study groups work. I've seen that time and time again where people that were involved in good, decent study groups, they would improve their grades 20, 30 points at the time. So as we become more social because of social media, study groups seem to work as long as you don't waste your time talking about things that aren't involved in the class. And I want to make sure it's crystal clear on day one that you understand what is needed for the course, what you need to do on your part, what I will do on my part. And if it's not crystal clear, we need to clear it up on the first couple of days of class. And sometimes you have to be like Nike and just do it. So not going to the beach or the lake every weekend because you have anatomy to do. Not going out to dinner all the time, to stay home in a quiet setting and review over your note cards or create graphic organizers for the objectives. Just do it. The reward, I promise you, will pay off after the class. Come August at final exam time, I promise you, you'll know more about yourself and more about how you learn, and hopefully quite a bit more about the other systems that are involved in Anatomy 2 than you ever thought you would. Different learning styles, again, in class I pay quite a bit of time talking about to figure out what type of learner are you. Are you visual? Do you need to see things? Do you need to color code things? Are you auditory? Is just listening to someone explain going to click in your brain so that you remember it? Do you have to write out the objectives and use note cards and rewrite everything? That, again, you need to pay particular attention to your time management if you're rewriting the textbook. Self-study, being solitary by yourself in a quiet environment, or are you more social and these study groups where you can talk over, discuss, check to see if you're on the right track? Does that work best for you? But find, if you don't know already, your very best learning style, and then acclimate the way that you prepare for the exams based off of that style. An example of a graphic organizer. This is the objective about the 3 types of cells that are found in the pancreas as far as their endocrine function. So within an islet of the pancreas you have alpha, beta, and delta cells. So specifically the 2 big hormones are glucagon and insulin. Glucagon from the alpha cells raises blood glucose, beta cells secrete insulin, and insulin lowers blood glucose. The delta cells are a paracrine secretion, so we'll get into the chapter and see that that means it is a localized hormone that only affects the alpha and beta cells within that particular pancreas. So I've covered the basic part of that objective with one graphic organizer. If you wanted to do 3 note cards or 10 note cards or write it out in question answer format, you could do that with the objectives, but this is just another example if you're visual learners. And I would probably color code each one of these so that when I close my eyes on test day, I could see that alpha cells were in the yellow box, beta cells were in the green box, and the blue box contained delta cells down at the bottom. Flashcards, again, now with technology you have Quizlet.com, so instead of going and investing in tons of note cards at Walmart, you can create a free account in Quizlet.com and you can drop and drag note cards into your account. You can share with other people. You'll find that with anatomy and physiology, it's worldwide. There are some standards that it doesn't matter if you're taking this in Italy or in South America or in Canada or Australia, it's still the blood flow through the heart. It's still the the structures of the heart. It's still the hormones that govern homeostasis within the body. So it doesn't change when you're looking at people that have submitted from even other parts of the world. The main thing about study skills is please, please, please don't cram. Cramming does nothing, especially in Anatomy 2. Anatomy 1 was very heavy with lab. Lecture progressed as you went through the semester, but in Anatomy 2 it flip-flops. The physiology portion of Anatomy 2 is much more in depth. There are much more objectives, and lab tends to ease up. Besides cardiovascular, the labs in Anatomy 2 you should find much more simpler, much more straightforward than like all the body tissues, all of the bone features, and all of the muscles that you learned in Anatomy 1. Don't try to cram for hours. Do a 20-30 minute study period, take a break, and then come back and do it. Please tell yourself and make a pact with me that you'll do a little bit of Anatomy 2 every day. So a little every day will go a long way with you, especially if you're time managing and you're doing everything else that you're supposed to do. Ask questions. So if you don't I don't explain things correctly, you don't understand, send me an email and I will try to answer it the best way possible in an email. A lot of times with these long objectives and you're talking about a major concept, go back and review over the video, but make sure that you get the questions answered that you have. There's no stupid questions with me. You also need to note that since this is an online course, you are required to come to the 6 exam dates. You'll have 30 minutes for lab and an hour for lecture. Overall, once you get here, you get signed in to Blackboard. So make sure that you print out your calendar, follow that. So I have it outlined with what we're doing in the traditional class. You should be doing that same part of the chapter with the lecture material from the internet class. So the in-class traditional structure should match your timeline and your calendar also. Pay attention to the exam schedule. It gives you the date of the exam, the computer lab that I have reserved for us, and the different times that you can test. So the course calendar again should, if you notice here, it tells you that the quizzes are due at this particular semester. They were due at 12 noon, but we have already said they're due at 12 night, the night before the exam. The chapters and when you should be doing that part of the chapter are listed, which labs correlate on that particular date, and then again the exam dates are listed for you. The exam schedule has a printable PDF file up at the top, plus it has a corresponding table that's in Blackboard, so if we do have to change anything about the exam schedule, it will correct itself and post in this chart in Blackboard. A lot of people don't find the exam schedule because there's so much on the Getting Started page that it's down at the bottom. So please scroll down toward the bottom underneath your course grading criteria, underneath your course calendar, and you should find the exam schedule there for you. As far as course policies, what are excused absences, this is all found in your syllabus, and these are held up college-wide. If you do miss an exam, please, as fast as summer is going to go, as fast as every semester goes, you have 2 to 5 days to make up the material that you miss, if it's excused. As far as makeup exams, they could or could not be the same format. This applies to both excused and unexcused absences. There's 3 different makeup days that I usually have set up every semester, but we'll do this on a case-by-case basis.